The body healed. The pain remained. And now WWE had a problem. It's not the kind that could be solved with contracts or creative meetings, but the kind that sat heavy in silence. Like the kind that stared back from locker room mirrors when the cameras were off. When she walked out that night, the crowd didn't erupt. They froze, because this wasn't a comeback built on fireworks or celebration. It was built on memory, on absence, on the echo of everything that had gone wrong. Fans at home leaned closer to their screens, not sure what they were supposed to feel. Relief, fear, guilt. Her name trended within minutes, not because she smiled or waved, but because she didn't. She stood there, still letting the weight of the moment settle like dust after a collapse. The arena felt smaller somehow, as if the past had returned with her and taken up space. Backstage. Producers exchanged looks that said more than words ever could. This wasn't in the rundown. This wasn't how returns were supposed to feel. Wrestlers who had once shared laughs with her now watched from behind curtains, unsure whether to be happy she was back or uneasy about what she represented. She'd left broken. That much was undeniable. Everyone remembered the stretcher, the quiet aftermath, the way her name stopped being mentioned after a while. We moved on, as it always does. New faces, new stories, new heroes. But pain doesn't move on. It waits. And when she returned, she brought that waiting with her. Social media exploded into arguments, not celebrations. Some fans welcomed her like a survivor. Others questioned whether she belonged anymore. If you asked the question, no one wanted to say out loud, what if she wasn't the same? Her family watched from home, hands clasped, knowing how long the nights had been, how many times she had wondered if this moment would ever come. They saw something different in her eyes now. Not hope, not excitement. Focus. The kind that comes from losing something and deciding it will never happen again. WWE had framed her absence as unfortunate. Fans had framed it as tragic. But she framed it as unfinished. And as the camera lingered on her face, expression calm and unreadable, one truth became unavoidable. This return wasn't about proving she could still wrestle. It was about proving that what broke her hadn't won. And that realization made everyone uncomfortable because it meant the story wasn't over. It was just beginning. The days that followed her return felt louder than the night itself. Interviews replayed her entrance in slow motion, dissecting every step, every breath, every second she didn't speak. Analysts tried to explain her silence as strategy, as mystery, as branding, but fans sensed something deeper. This wasn't performance. This was restraint. Backstage, conversations shifted. Her name came up in rooms where it hadn't been spoken in months. Some welcomed her back with cautious smiles, offering hugs that lingered just a little too long. Others kept their distance, unsure how to approach someone who felt like a reminder. Creative plans were rewritten quietly, not because she demanded it, but because her presence changed the atmosphere. She didn't ask for favors. She didn't make threats. She simply showed up early, trained longer, and left without saying much at all. That unsettled people more than anger ever could. Veterans whispered that she looked sharper, leaner, different. Younger talent watched her closely, sensing that this wasn't just another return story. Fans in the arena began reacting differently too. Cheers mixed with hesitation, applause followed by silence. It was as if everyone was waiting for her to explain herself, to tell them what this return meant. But she refused. Media outlets speculated endlessly. Was she bitter? Was she angry at the company? At the fans? At herself? Old clips resurfaced of her smiling, carefree, full of belief. Side by side with the present, the contrast was unsettling. The woman who returned carried herself like someone who had seen the ending once already and refused to relive it. At home, her family avoided watching replays. They didn't need reminders of the fall, of the recovery, of the nights when she questioned her own worth outside the ring. They only cared that she was standing again, even if the world didn't understand the cost. One night after a live show, a camera caught her alone in the ring, long after the crowd had left. No music, no lights. Just her, walking slowly, touching the ropes like they were old scars. That image spread faster than any promo could. Fans began to realize this wasn't a comeback driven by revenge against a person. It was a confrontation with a past version of herself. WWE had built its legacy on moments, but this felt like a reckoning. Something raw, something unresolved. And as anticipation grew for her first match back, one question dominated every conversation. Not whether she would win, but what would happen if she didn't? Because some returns are about glory, others are about survival. Her first match back wasn't announced with grandeur. No countdown, no dramatic graphics. Just a quiet confirmation that spread through the audience like a secret. When the night arrived, the arena buzzed with a nervous energy that no amount of commentary could smooth over. As she walked down the ramp, her steps were measured, deliberate, as if every movement carried meaning. The bell rang, and for a moment, time slowed. First lockup told a story words never could. She wasn't hesitant. She wasn't reckless. She was controlled. Every strike landed with intention, not rage. Fans noticed it immediately. This wasn't the same competitor they remembered. She fought like someone who understood fragility intimately, like someone who knew exactly how close everything could come undone. The crowd reacted in waves, rising and falling with each exchange. Some cheered instinctively. Others watched in silence, absorbing the gravity of what they were witnessing. Backstage, officials leaned forward, eyes fixed, realizing that this match carried consequences beyond the result. When she took her first hard fall, the arena gasped. It's not because of the impact, but because of the memory it triggered. She rose slowly, steadying herself, and in that moment, the crowd erupted. It's not for dominance, but for resilience. She won the match, but the victory felt secondary. The real impact came afterward, when she stood alone again, breathing heavily, eyes scanning the crowd. There was no celebration, no pose, just acknowledgement. Fans left that night changed, unsure how to describe what they had seen. It wasn't a triumphant return, it was a statement. Media coverage struggled to capture it, defaulting to familiar language that felt insufficient. At home, her family cried quietly, not out of fear but release. The match had proven what doctors and time could not. She belonged there again, but belonging came with a cost. Other wrestlers began to view her differently now, not as competition, but as pressure. As a reminder that survival wasn't guaranteed. WWE had built stars on spectacle, but she offered something else. Truth. And truth is dangerous in an industry built on illusion. As fans debated her future, one realization began to surface. This wasn't about how high she could climb. It was about how deeply she could change the ground beneath her. That made everyone uneasy. With each appearance, the tension grew. She spoke rarely, but when she did, her words were simple, almost quiet. No accusations, no promises, just reflections that lingered longer than any shouted promo ever could. Fans dissected her tone, her pauses, the way she seemed more interested in listening than explaining. Backstage, the mood shifted again. Some saw her as inspiration, proof that the system could break someone and still let them return. Others saw her as a mirror they didn't want to look into. Management praised her professionalism publicly, but privately wrestled with uncertainty. Her story didn't fit neatly into marketing campaigns. It couldn't be simplified. Media narratives grew louder, more chaotic. Headlines contradicted each other daily. Hero, liability, survivor, threat. She ignored them all. At home, her family noticed the weight she carried more than ever. Success hadn't eased it. If anything, it sharpened her awareness of what was at stake. One night, during a live segment, she paused mid-sentence, eyes drifting toward the crowd. The silence stretched, uncomfortable and raw. Then she said it. Not as a challenge, not as a complaint, but as a fact. She had healed physically, but the pain remained. The reaction was immediate. Some fans stood, others sat frozen. Backstage, conversations stopped entirely. That single statement reframed everything. It wasn't weakness, it was honesty. Jay. And honesty in WWE is rare. Clips of that moment spread faster than any highlight. Fans debated its meaning, projecting their own struggles onto her words. Wrestlers felt it differently. For some, it was permission to acknowledge their own pain. For others, it was a warning. She wasn't here to pretend everything was fine. WWE now faced a new kind of star. One who couldn't be controlled by silence or spectacle. She didn't demand change. She embodied it. And that made her dangerous. Not because she wanted to tear the system down, but because she had survived it. As her presence continued to reshape the locker room and the audience alike, one thing became clear. This story was no longer just hers. It belonged to everyone who had ever been told to move on quietly. In the months that followed, the noise settled into something quieter, heavier. She became consistent, reliable, undeniable. Wins came. Losses came too. And with each one, the narrative evolved. Fans no longer asked if she belonged. They asked what she represented. Younger wrestlers cited her as influence, not for her moves, but for her mindset. Veterans treated her with a respect reserved for those who had seen the edge and returned. WWE adjusted without announcing it. Stories became slower. Moments were allowed to breathe. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but real. One night after another hard-fought match, she stayed in the ring as the crowd filed out. The camera lingered, capturing her sitting against the ropes, exhausted but present. No music played, no commentary filled the space, just the sound of the arena emptying. Fans watching at home felt something unexpected. Calm, reflection. This wasn't about danger anymore. It was about meaning. She hadn't returned to dominate. She had returned to exist fully, scars and all. And in doing so, she changed the expectations placed on everyone who followed. The viral moment that once defined her return faded into history, replaced by something deeper. A legacy not built on perfection, but persistence. Her family watched her now with pride rather than fear, understanding that this journey wasn't about avoiding pain, it was about carrying it with purpose. WWE moved forward as it always does, but not unchanged. Somewhere along the way, a lesson had been learned, even if never spoken aloud. Strength isn't the absence of damage. It's the decision to stand anyway. As the final image faded, one truth remained. She had left broken. She had returned dangerous. It's not to others, but to the idea that pain should ever be hidden.